All right, welcome to Buildup class number 7. We've got 2 more after this, so a couple more weeks to go, and I'm looking forward to the last 2 as well. In our very last lecture in a couple of weeks, what I normally do is I ask students to come up with 1 or 2 questions of their own. So I'd like everybody on the call to think of questions for Aaron and myself to answer in the last class 2 weeks from today. So if you don't mind, think about something maybe we haven't covered, something that is a particular interest of yours, and send those questions to me. I'll put them on a Word document, Aaron, and then you and I will split them up, and the ones that I think would be best answered by you, you'll answer them and I'll answer them too. So take 5 or 10 minutes or even 15 minutes and think, what is the 1 or 2 things about real estate development, about construction, renovation that maybe we haven't answered, and just send them to me. And don't make the questions a paragraph long. A couple of sentences would be good, maybe 2 or 3 sentences at the most, and a question at the end of it. So please do think about that and send me a couple of questions for that. It's a lot of fun. It's a Q&A session with Aaron and me. And of course, after the class is over, Aaron is always reachable by email, and so am I. So if you have anything that comes up, feel free to reach out to us. All right, we have 2 guests today. The first one is Matt Woodworth. Everybody calls him Woody, and Michelle Woodworth. Just wave hi, you two. There they are. And they're wonderful entrepreneurs I coach, and they have a great story to tell. And one of the things I wanted to talk about just before I turn it over to Matt and Michelle is I teach something called GTBMR. GTBMR. What the heck does that stand for? It stands for Get the Business Model Right. And people don't really understand what I mean by business models, and they say, "Oh yeah, business models are things that that apply only to just moving some documents around here, only to tech companies." And of course they do. And getting the business model right does apply to tech companies, but it also applies to real estate. It applies to your personal business for life if you have one. It applies to a service business. It applies to everything. And probably the best way I know of demonstrating that is with this thing. It's an Apple iPhone. I think it's. And he doesn't like it when you give him too much. I'm going to ask people to mute themselves. Everyone knows the iPhone. It's been around, I think, for probably 14 years. But what they don't understand is that Steve Jobs, before he passed away, spent about 50% of his time on Apple business models, about 20% of his time on product design and development, and then the rest of his time on everything else. But think about that. About half of his time was on business models. And when people look at the iPhone, they just say, well, that's a cell phone. It's far more than that. It is a platform. And I asked ChatGPT, one of those AIs, what are the revenue streams today from an Apple iPhone? And the AI said, obviously, iPhone sales. But in addition to that, Apple has an app store. We all know that. Apple Music, Apple Arcade, Apple TV, iCloud storage, Apple Pay, Apple Care, which is insurance. And they sell a ton of accessories. Even those, earbuds that they sell is like a multi-billion-dollar business. So they sell cases and chargers and headphones and smartwatches too. And then they have iCloud storage, and they get royalties from third-party manufacturers. Something else they get. I'm just going to mute a few more people. Something else they get is they get royalties, I said, from third-party manufacturers, but they also get part of AT&T, Verizon, Bell, Rogers, TELUS monthly revenues. So I want you to think about the Apple iPhone, and then I want you to think about the Motorola phone. For the younger people, they may not remember, but Motorola used to sell really good phones that were like flip phones, like the Star Trek phones. And And here's the difference. Motorola would sell you a flip phone at retail for maybe $140, of which Motorola would get probably about $70 or $75 of that. And they were such good phones, you couldn't kill them. And so maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years later, you might go back to Motorola and buy another phone. So a customer to Motorola was worth maybe $70 or $75 once every 5, 6, 7 years. An Apple iPhone customer, on the other hand, uses a lot of those services, and they are worth thousands and thousands of dollars. The holy grail of every business model is committed monthly recurring revenues, CMRR. I don't care whether you're a real estate business, a tech company, a service company, whatever kind of contracting you do or personal business for life you do. The key to a great business is having some committed monthly recurring revenues. Apple has that in spades. As a result, Apple is worth $3 trillion. No company I expected to see in my lifetime would be worth $1 trillion, let alone 2 or 3 trillion. $3 trillion. And it's this thing, the iPhone, that made Apple worth $3 trillion, because it's a platform for making money. And what we're going to hear from Woody and Michelle in a few minutes, I'm going to make you the co-host, Woody. What we're going to hear from Matt and Michelle in a couple of minutes is about how they bought something very inexpensively. So they're a wholesale buyer, not a retail buyer, and how they plan to drive the value of that that wholesale purchase from $170,000 to maybe a few million. And what it is going to make Michelle and Woody successful isn't that they bought some real estate and it's going to go up a few percent a year. It's the business model in real estate that I think will make them successful. So that's my introduction to Woody and Michelle. And Woody, why don't you unmute yourself and you can share your screen and we'll keep going.
Okay, sounds good, Bruce. Thank you for that. Should be sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Perfectly.
You can see it. Okay.
What we can see so far is just a line. I'm not seeing. Are you seeing the screen? So what we're seeing right now is just a line across saying Buildup June 8th, save to my Mac. Oh, you're using a Mac. Guess what?
What?
Mac and Zoom don't necessarily cooperate very well. So do you mind stopping sharing for a minute? And guess who's going to have to show the slide deck?
You will, Bruce.
You're putting me to work. I'll charge you extra. All right, hang on. I'll have to do that. See if it works a little better. So Macs and Zoom for some reason often fail. I don't know why, but they do.
Bruce, before we go through that, let me just see if I can try something different here so that I can drive my deck. And if not, then I'll pass it back over.
All right. Okay. I'll stop sharing again. Sorry about this going back and forth, you guys.
2 seconds, and then we should be good.
All right. Oh, what did you do?
It's magic, Bruce.
All right.
I just stopped my my PowerPoint in presentation mode, and then.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, I see it fine. Dennis, can you see it okay? Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. So my name is Matt Woodworth, and this is my business partner and wife, Michelle. I go by Woody, she goes by Michelle. And we did bring some discussion points with us today, Bruce. And as always, as we go through this, we'd like to make sure that it's conversational. So if you have questions you want to drill down, or anyone that's participating wants to know more about something, please chime in and we can keep this as interactive as possible. I think there's a lot to learn from the journey that Michelle and I are on right now, and I think that it'll add some value to the students in this class as well. So here's some of the things that we'd like to cover today. There can be more. So we're going to talk about us, who we are, a little bit about the village, and also we talked about finding properties and being wholesale buyers. That's one of the key things that really sets us up for success right from the get-go. In conjunction with that, as you talked about as we opened up, is the need for a business model. So we're going to talk about the business model that the village has as part of that as well. And then we're going to talk about some of the people that are complementary or our dream team to making sure and helping us along the way to ensure that we're successful. We're going to talk about coaching as part of our dream team as well. We'll also look at some of the cap rates and the HABU, which if you're not familiar with it, which I'm sure you are by now, highest and best use. And that's been a cornerstone of everything that we've considered as we move through this business model exercise, the purchasing exercise and the planning moving forward. We're always looking at the highest and best use, because God's not making any more land. We want to make sure that we can capitalize on that to the highest extent possible. And then we'll talk about building the brand. That's one of the things that's going to be super important for us as we move forward too. You talk about Apple as an example, Bruce, and the brand around that and the platform that they built. That's kind of what we're looking to do as part of the village as well. And then obviously we can talk about and take questions on some of the lessons learned as we go through this process as well. And then we'll talk about the road ahead. One of the things that I'd like to do just as we kick things off, I'd like to welcome a special guest of ours who we work with very closely right now. He's been a tremendous asset in terms of helping us navigate programs and understand how Business Development Canada works. Kevin Price is joining us today as a participant to listen in and learn more about the business model and what we're doing at the village, but also as an opportunity perhaps to chime in if there's some color or some background that he can offer in terms of additional context, how others on this call might be able to benefit from BDC as well. So thank you, Kevin, for joining us today. And if you want to just sort of quickly raise your hand and say hi to everybody, and then we'll kick things off in the conversation.
Yeah. How's everybody doing? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Kevin, I wanted to welcome you as well. Woody asked me to do that, and I forgot. But, we have a good relationship with BDC across Canada. BDC, as everybody knows, we had Amelia Campbell on the course earlier from BDC, and BDC brands itself as the bank for entrepreneurs. And that's really, really important to us. We are a group of entrepreneurs. And Kevin, I was wondering if you're comfortable with that, if you could put your name, your contact information, your cell number, if you're willing, and your email address in the chat box after you introduce yourself, so everybody knows how to reach you.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So pleasure to meet everybody. I'm Kevin Price, as I call him Woody. Sorry, Matt said. And yeah, I'm here to listen a little bit more about what he's doing, but also like he said, I am helping him out and providing financing, and it's a pleasure to meet every one of you. And I'll just like Bruce said, I'll definitely put my contact information there, and I encourage you guys to reach out to me if you want to know more about BDC and more about what we can do. As Bruce said as well, we are the bank for entrepreneurs. Our programs are designed specifically for entrepreneurs. We don't do any personal banking. We don't do any of the like credit cards and all that stuff. So it's strictly for businesses, and you definitely want to take advantage of that. I'm also going to put the BDC website on as well, because there's a plethora of information on that, of like free resources that you can use to become successful. And that's all I'll say for now. I'm sure that I'll chime in a little bit later, but that's all I'll say for now.
Excellent. Okay. Bruce, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we kick things off at our end?
No, I think this is going to be a really exciting and interesting presentation, Woody. I'm looking forward to it.
As are we. Okay. So about us, we've been looking to get out of the J.O.B. Our careers for a number of years at this point in time. We invested in real estate in 2013. We bought a couple of residential properties, and our goal there was just to sort of maintain them, cash flow them, which they're barely doing, and sort of retire off the income from that at some point in time, somewhere down the future, and sort of have a little bit of a nest egg. And then we came in touch with Bruce, and we started learning about highest and best use through some of the courses that we had participated in. And then we decided that it would make sense for us to invest in some coaching and understand how we can actually leverage and make the highest and best use of the existing properties that we did have. And we went through that exercise, and then we really started getting the taste for what the art of the possible could look like, because we'd seen some other use cases of students of Bruce's who had absolutely game-changing success stories in having gone through this path with him and invested in real estate and made highest and best use. And the use cases that Bruce provided were stunning. So we came to a decision where we said, if we could spend X on coaching and get X exponential in terms of the return on our investments from buying a property or a series of properties and pulling ourselves out of the job market, which, as Bruce coached us on, job means just above broke. So we love that one, and it's true. And it's not just broke financially, it's broke in a number of other ways too. And the entrepreneurship approach really sort of helped us do some vision casting to show us what the art of the possible could look like. And so we decided to take the plunge. I've been in tech for 30 years. Michelle's a project manager for the government of Canada. She's our safety net right now, continues to work for the government of Canada, spends a lot of time behind the scenes, making sure that we're on track, dealing with vendors, dealing with contractors. And I am the one that goes and meets with them. I'm sort of like the face of the business and the entrepreneurial arm of our personal business for life. Again, it's something that Bruce talks about. So that's our background, and we'll talk about where we've gone from there and what our trajectory is and what our journey is for the village. And you talked about us taking an investment of $170,000. I saw your brief note this morning, and hopefully turning it into something worth multi-million. But that's just who we are, what we're looking to do, and we actually do have. This is one of the other things that Bruce talked to us about, is an OES. And for those of you who are not familiar with OES, it stands for 1-year exit strategy. So that was the line in the sand that we drew for us to get out of the workplace. I'm now out of the workplace. Michelle is still the one. She's the financial engine behind this project right now. But then we're looking at 3 and 23, which is the next thing. So we've got these milestones that we're looking at accomplishing so that we can actually get to where we need to go. And next year is going to be more in 24. And after that, it's going to be thrive in 25. And we'll talk about what that journey is going to look like, where we are as part of that, as we continue to move forward. So before I move forward, was there any question, Bruce? Did you want to add any commentary or color from the participants as well? Or should I just keep going?
No, everybody knows, I think, on the presentation, if you have a question, put it in the chat box. And I know Kevin's having a little problem seeing your slides, but I think, Kevin, that's because you're on the BDC system, and the BDC system might be blocking anything. But if you can, I know you can access the chat. You can put your contact information in there. Everybody will see it. But if you have any questions for Woody or for Michelle as we go through, put them in the chat box and I'll ask them.
Right. Thanks, Bruce. And I think this is being recorded as well, so we can always share that link with you, Kevin, or anybody else that's not able to see the slides. Sound fair? Okay, so about the village, this is a piece of property that we purchased in November of 2022 in Smith Falls, and this is an aerial view of it. It's 6.5 acres, and it's zoned highway commercial. And within the zoning, there is a lot of different accepted uses for it. And as it turns out, the village, which we will talk about, does accommodate for storage and for workshops. And that is really the nature of what it is that we're doing. And that's the crux of our business model, which we'll expand on a little later as well. Just to give you a quick idea, this is the property that we have here. We paid $170,000 for these 6.5 acres. And we're not on the actual highway, which is one of the things that probably allowed us to buy wholesale and do extremely well. We bought 18% below what the asking price was, and we would have essentially otherwise been landlocked, but there's a couple of right of ways that allow us access to this beautiful 6.5 acres of bedrock that is going to serve us for the storage solutions and the contractor yards that we'll talk about a little bit more. So that's what the property looks like on Highway 43 in Smith Falls. And I do have a video, Bruce, if you'd want us to spend a minute and a half to provide an overview of what the village does. This is on our website, but I can share it, or we can go after it later. But this is
No,
part of.
I was going to say, Woody, I actually queued up your video too, just in case you didn't want to share it or you forgot to. I think it's very worthwhile because something I didn't mention about Woody is that not only is he a real estate developer and entrepreneur, he's also a marketing and branding expert. And so I think it's really worthwhile showing that video.
Okay, just sanity check. Can you see the screen that says all about?
Yeah, about the village?
All about.
Yeah. No, it says about the village, explainer video, and then there's a link.
Okay, so then let's just do this. I had it queued up, but we'll go here instead.
All right. See
Can
what
you-
happens. We're still seeing the slide deck, Woody.
Not sharing the page. You're sharing the initial page that you had, so share the other page. Stop sharing, share again.
Where's it say stop sharing?
Go back to your, not in here, go back to your presentation. Stop sharing.
Okay,
Now go to the video. No,
yeah. Okay, Bruce, I'm gonna turn it over to you. I apologize.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll share my screen with you. These presentations are a little tricky, but yeah. So here's the website that Woody and Michelle put together. It's called the Village Workshops and Storage Solutions. And I hope, Kevin, can you give me the thumbs up if you can see my screen okay? I guess you can. Woody, can you see it okay? Okay, so I'm going to turn up my volume a little bit, and we've got 1:16 video here.
All about the village workshops and storage solutions. Conveniently located only 3 minutes from downtown Smith Falls and serving Eastern Ontario. The village is a family business that provides total end-to-end storage and workshop solutions for contractors, small businesses, and artists, all in one great location. The village's workshops and maker spaces are absolutely ideal for contractors who will enjoy the many benefits and peace of mind of having your equipment, inventory, and business operations in one single convenient location. For artisans, creators who have outgrown the garage, living room, and basement, and now need their own private space to apply their craft, store inventory, get more done, and easily meet with customers at a reputable business location. All of our workshops are secure, heated, well lit, and come with power and high-speed internet, so your business doesn't have to skip a beat. And again, you can access your space 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Contact us now for more information and to secure your spot in the village.
How was that, Woody?
That worked for me. Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it. Okay.
And one thing I'll say just before I turn it back to Woody is he doesn't call his clients tenants, he calls them villagers. And Woody's all about theming and branding and community. And when you build a business model where people feel they're part of something bigger than themselves, that's a really important value added. I think that's one of the things that drives $3 trillion worth of market value for Apple is that people who have iPhones, they feel like they're part of an iPhone community, even though it's very, very large.
So are we good? Can you see my screen, Bruce?
Not yet.
I think you're gonna have to stop and start again. I think, because it didn't start properly.
I think Michelle should be showing it.
I think I agree.
That's okay. People will forgive us.
They should have it.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Unbelievable.
You're good, you're good.
Okay. Can you see this?
This being our story.
Yes,
Can
we
you
can.
Okay,
Yep.
so we talked about, okay, so here we are and just moving forward. So finding properties, this was, as I mentioned, the really key part about where we feel that we're going to be getting in on the right property for the right price at the right time. So Bruce, you talked about earlier buying wholesale versus retail, and that's exactly what we did. We went for the wholesale approach. And really what that boiled down to was finding a property that fit our criteria, which we will talk about, which would have to have been, you know, the zoning, in this case, it was highway commercial. So it had to have the type of zoning to support the type of business and the business model that we wanted to operate from. And as I mentioned, we bought for 18% below asking price, and to say the least, it was a fixer-upper, and it continues to be a fixer-upper. But that's the reason that it had been on the market for as long as it had. I think that it was on the market for well over a year and hadn't budged, and there hadn't been any nibbles. But we saw a diamond in the rough in the village, especially with the property as it stood. And that's one of the things that we learned about through our coaching and our education with you, is to find those diamonds in the rough and then figure out a way to animate those and make the highest and best use of the property in question. You know, there's some criteria that we followed. So like days on market, fixer upper, you know, those were some of the main things that we looked at. And the reason that those were important for us is because we wanted to buy wholesale, and wholesale means properties that are often overlooked and undervalued for reasons of appearance. For the most part, the people just can't see the forest through the trees and extract the vision of what that property could become. So that was one of the big cornerstones of how we launched our search to begin with, and that's how we came upon it. They are out there. They still continue to be out there in terms of properties that have a tremendous upside to them. But it does require, and you were very candid and forthright as we began our journey, that it does require work. And finding the property was a lot of work. Going through the process was a lot of work, and building it up to what we want it and we know it can be is going to require a lot of work too. But I think that was one of the key things, is to not waste our time looking for a retail purchase, because the going in cap rates, as you'd indicated, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. Bruce, I'm not sure if I captured that properly, but that was the guiding principle in terms of how we found this property and why we are where we are right now with it.
Right. I mean, I think that's accurate. And Woody has said perfectly that one of the things that you can do when you search MLS in the States or in Canada is you can filter by DOM, days on market. And I look for aging listings. Woody, obviously, Michelle did the same thing. And just to give you a bit of a comparison, Woody and Michelle have about 6.5 acres of commercial industrial land. And it's about 26,000 an acre. In Ottawa today, if you can find it, you'll probably pay anywhere from 450,000 to 750,000 an acre. So what Woody and Michelle could have done is they could have found some property, advertised by one of the big real estate brokerages, and it could have been, I don't know, it could have been $450,000 an acre, or it could have been 750. But even if we just take a simple number like 500,000 an acre multiplied by 6.5 acres, you get a purchase price of around $3 or $3.25 million. That's a retail buy. And if any of you are Amazon or Wayfair and you're looking for a fulfillment center, whether you spend $500,000 an acre or even $1 million an acre really doesn't matter to you, because your business is so huge. But as real estate investors, you definitely have, in my opinion, I think Woody and Michelle share this opinion, you have to look for the diamond in the rough, as Woody said. You want to look for something that's a wholesale price. Now, I have to tell you, it was all on Michelle and Woody when they found this. And when they found a 6.5 acre site with a 4,000 square foot existing building on it, mind you, it needs lots of work. When they found something that had an existing building on it and it's 6.5 acres of land within 30 or 35 minutes of the city of Ottawa for 26,000 an acre, including the building, you can say that that's an incredible buy, and it was.
Yeah, it really was. We were happy with it. We'd shared that with a couple of realtors that we're working with right now, and almost fell off their chairs at what we ended up paying for it. That for them, that was unheard of. I'm talking about James and Simon, Bruce, but yeah, that was phenomenal find for us. So moving forward to business models, and again, this is another big cornerstone of what we're doing, and we'll explain why it's important for us at the Village. So first and foremost, like I said, a good business model is absolutely critical, and there really the business model that we have right now is all about differentiating ourselves from other storage facilities and compounding value. And I'll explain what we mean by that. So it doesn't matter where you drive, anywhere in the city or on the outskirts, you'll see storage facilities everywhere. And Smiths Falls is no exception to that. There are storage facilities. I think there's 11 self-storage facilities in Smith Falls alone, right? We counted that, and this is, we did a lot of market research before we actually pulled the trigger and bought this. But one of the things that really resonated with us is differentiation and a business model. So if we are going to go in and compete head to head with people that are in the self-storage business, we'd have an uphill battle every single step of the way, just because of the presence and how saturated the marketplace is. So we'd asked and we'd consulted with and coached with Bruce. And one of the things that we said is we don't want to be working 90 hours a week for the next 20 years trying to get out of the job market. We wanted to really find something that would provide us with the freedom that we were seeking. And we needed a business model that would allow us to do that. Work notwithstanding, we're prepared to do it, but that would eventually become a little bit more hands-off and allow us to extract revenue and have a lifestyle, but also repeat that as well. So it boiled down to, how are we going to be different with the property that we purchased, these 6.5 acres? And one of the things that we'd learned about was the notion of contractor storage yards. So guess how many contractor storage yards there are in Smith Falls? There's not a single one. In fact, the closest one is probably about an hour and 5 minutes away from us. So we're servicing a marketplace that does not have this. And then compound value is really where we're going to make that big differentiation. So not only are we the only contractor storage yard in the area, storage yards facility in the area, but we're adding value to that by creating workshop scenarios. And Bruce, this is one of the things that we learned a lot about too, is workshops are becoming more and more prevalent in everyday life. There's people who live in apartments that want a workshop, a place to apply their craft. And there's also people who are contractors who need space above and beyond just the actual storage facility. Now, that's one of the things that the storage facilities that we would ostensibly compete with head to head, they can't do that. So the model that we had is, let's provide our customers with an area where they can store their industrial equipment, they can store their big gear, but it also have a place where they can actually run their operations, and they can do their business from that as well, and have workshops. So our competitors, our direct competitors in the space, would have nothing but individual self-storage units. And if someone wants a workshop, now they're going to have to go to 2 different places to accomplish 2 different goals and take up twice the amount of time and ostensibly spend twice the amount of money. In our case, if you've got a storage yard and you require a workshop or an office space, this is something that we can very easily accommodate because of the way that we set up this business model. So you talk about a platform earlier with Apple. I'm not comparing ourselves to Apple just yet, other than what we are providing is a platform whereby now you can keep adding, for us, that ever so clever committed monthly recurring revenue, but with a path to cash that continues to grow and provide us with more and more. As we go through this business model, one of the key things too is we're not just going to build it and they will come. So we've got a phased approach, and we'll talk about those a little later. But really, our approach is, we're going to observe, we're going to listen, we're going to adapt, we're going to test, and we're going to execute. So we're going to do some split testing, some A/B testing. What is getting more traction? What yard size is getting more traction? What size of a workshop is getting more traction? can we sell them together as a package, or do we start selling them individually based on either a yard space or a workshop? These are the things that we're going to listen to our customers, and they're going to be our most important source of education and ultimately of revenue.
Woody,
Yeah.
we have a question for you from Dale. But before we get to his question, I just want to reinforce what you just said. Steve Jobs, when he introduced the very first iPhone, saw in his mind the business model and the platform that the iPhone could become. He understood that it was going to be different from Motorola's flip phone, that it was going to be a platform for services. But he also understood, that was just inherent in the man, he also understood that business models change. And so what Woody's talking about, all the stuff he's talking about, A/B testing, listen, adapt, all of that stuff is very important. So you add some differentiated value to your model, you launch your model, but you have to be sensitive to the marketplace. And every 6 months or a year, maybe every 18 months or 2 years, but not longer than that, you have to revisit your model and make sure that you're continuing to update it, differentiate it, and move forward. Like the business model that Woody and Michelle are doing today is very different than it would have been 2 years ago. So, and the Apple business model evolved as well. And like I said, it's a $3 trillion value today. So the ability to execute is very important. We're going to hear about that, but the ability to be adaptable and to change as the market changes. We're in a time right now where inflation, interest rates, war, climate change, many things and challenges are out there for all of humanity. But us as individuals with small businesses or medium-sized business or even very large businesses like Apple, we have to be able to adapt and change. Now, Woody and Michelle, this is the question from Dale. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? In other words, which came first, the business idea or the property?
The business idea. Yeah, the business idea, this came out of some coaching sessions that we had. We'd spent a lot of time looking at different business models before we stumbled upon this one. And that really was the catalyst. And once we had that in mind, we knew exactly what we were looking for in terms of a property. So I would definitely say that the chicken, I think, came first, and then the egg being the property. Does that help, Dale?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm just curious about how your thinking process and how the development around the business model and the property sort of came together. I suspected as much, but I was curious to know what your process was.
Yeah. So that is essentially what the process was. I would say, it would probably be a hybrid between chicken and egg. Your question was kind of binary, but yeah, if I had to put it in the box, I would definitely start with, let's start with the business model and then find something that can actually fuel that. And so just in terms of business models as well, there was an article that Bruce shared with me, and it sent shivers down my spine because it told us that we are on the right track in terms of what it is that we're doing. Long story short, there's a big, I think it's a hedge fund in the US called Blackstone, and they figured out early that scuffing urban warehouses were a gold mine in the internet age. What we have here is something, the model that we're talking about right now is very, very well aligned with what this article actually talks about. And just jokingly, we thought that we'd come up with something called Woodstone and create our own hedge fund and keep doing this repeatedly and make billions in the process too. But that's putting the cart a lot before the horse. But again, it's validation of what it is that we're doing, and keeping apprised of what the market is saying and what the big people are doing too, for us is an indication that again, there's a path to cash and that we're on the right one.
And I would add to that, Woody, that I was patting myself on the back because I've been using this model, developing this model with clients of mine in the States and in Canada since 2015. And then I realized that the people at Blackstone, which is a private equity fund that's huge, started doing this in 2014. So, I'm not as smart as I think I am.
You're great, Bruce. So one of the things too, in terms of our journey, is having ourselves surrounded and surrounding ourselves with people that bring value to us day in, day out, and hopefully we bring value back to them in terms of how we engage. There's an old Schneider's commercial for cold cuts. I don't know if you remember that from the mid 80s. They say, know the difference that quality makes. And I think that applies in terms of the people that we work with to get this business up and running, but not just up and running, to continuously drive and thrive, survive, and make more profit for us and more revenues for us as we move forward too. So I'm referring to, this shouldn't be news to anybody, but having a good lawyer in your corner, in our corner, was something that was very key. We talked about being landlocked at the beginning, and part of the challenge that brought with us is having a right of way didn't necessarily allow us to bring hydro back to the barn. Bruce, you're familiar with our Achilles heel, which is getting hydro brought to the barn. We're almost there. We have great news that we'll update you on, but that was a big challenge for us too. And the property that is on the actual highway, the owners happen to be on the land operating under different names in the US somewhere. So getting in touch with them to get the permissions and all the necessary parts in place to bring hydro to the barn using that right of way were challenging. So having a lawyer in our corner, you referred us to Stephen Shepard. We got some really good advice on the best ways to proceed, some of the challenges that we might face, some of the opportunities that could happen, and really getting a different set of eyes and a different perspective on this challenge that for us as newbies seemed very daunting, and I'll say almost insurmountable just because of where we are in our journey. Having access to some really, really high quality professionals made the big difference there, and it put a lot of wind in our sails. So that's one example of someone you really want to have in your corner.
Woody,
Woody,
would you mind turning off your background, because Zoom is blurring you out. We can see Michelle fine, but we can't see you very well. It's like you want to be anonymous. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Is this good? Are we good now?
Yeah, that's excellent. And we have about another 15 minutes, so let's keep going.
Okay, let's keep going. And this is another one too. This is not a commercial for Bruce Firestone, but I think I do need to pause and talk about this a little bit. There's a lot of coaches in this business, and the best coaches are priceless. And this made me think of a story that I was told a while ago about a Picasso painting. Someone in a Paris restaurant went in and saw Picasso there on November 17th, 1959, and said, Picasso, could you draw me something on this napkin? And Picasso proceeded to draw this dove. And he said, how much do you want for it? Picasso said, $10,000. And the fan said, $10,000, it took you 10 seconds to do that. Well, Picasso responded, yes, but it took me 40 years to learn how to do it this way. So again, talking about the dream team, having a coach in your corner that has been through that knows people, that has the contacts, that has the context, all of these things. I would say that for us, if we had not had a coach going through this process, we wouldn't have found the property. And if we did, we would have found one that we would have paid too much for. And then we would probably still be twisting in the wind, looking for guidance, and probably firing and hiring coaches along the way. So I just want to take an opportunity to emphasize that. And right,
Yeah,
I think that we both agree. So that's something that, as part of your dream team, I would not overlook the value that a good coach brings. And Bruce, you've been that for us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So we talked about the different stages that we have. So we broke it down into two phases. There's a take the beach, which is the beginning phase. And this gives you an opportunity of what we're talking about here for taking the beach. That's our first capture, that committed monthly recurring revenue model. And then with that, we're going to test the market, make sure that we're listening to our customers, and we're adapting and executing in a way that our customers will respond to and help us grow with them. So we've got room for one tiny house, and the zoning allowed us for auxiliary housing. So we're going to use that tiny house and we're going to provide them with a deep discount on rent in exchange for us being able to call them on-site security, which is going to be super important because that's part of our model as well. People who store expensive machinery and inventory, that's going to be an extra sense of security for them. So we're going to have room for a tiny house. Out of the gates, we're going to have 10 workshops that we're designing in the barn, 2 contractor yards, and then 2 enhanced workshops. And those are the sheds, Bruce, that we had visited together, that we saw, that we've decided that we're going to put 2 as part of Take the Beach right now and see what the response from the market's going to look like there. And within that, we're going to have 2 different types of enhanced workshops. So we'll see which one is getting us more traction. So what this is going to net for us on a monthly basis is a $6,850 gross operating income and a net operating income of $54,000 a year. We took 34% off to make sure that we could accommodate for operational expenses. But this is what phase 1 Take the Beach looks like, and that's where we are right now once we have our.
Can I add something there, Woody?
Please.
Okay, so for everybody on the call, let's see, Dennis, because I can see you, do you mind unmuting yourself for a second? And we're going to make Dennis do a little bit of work here. All right, Dennis, do you have a calculator there?
Yes.
Since we're a couple of days past D-Day, I thought your terminology was excellent, Woody. Take the beach. So they did that, of course, on D-Day many, many years ago, June 6, 1945. But in this Take the Beach philosophy that Woody and Michelle have developed, means once they have done phase 1 and they have $6,850 a month in in gross operating income, it works out to $54,252 in net operating income per year. So this is where you come in, Dennis, with your calculator. So Woody and Michelle, I just went through an appraisal on a very similar project, and I expected that the market cap rate that the appraiser would apply to this income in a small town like Smith Falls would be probably 6%, maybe even a little higher. But the appraisers agreed to apply 5.5%. That is a very significant difference. So Dennis, if you divide 54,252 on your calculator, if you divide it by 0.055, what do you get?
Just over 986,000.
So Kevin, Mr. BDC, you paying attention? It means that just phase 1 alone, it means that Woody and Michelle, once they've accomplished phase 1, will have generated, they'll probably be able to get an appraised value of somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million just for phase 1 based on income, up from $170,000. So that gives you a sense of where you're going, Woody and Michelle, and why taking the beach, as we saw on D-Day and Normandy, how important that is.
Yeah, outstanding.
Thanks, Dennis.
I know we're limited for time here, Bruce, so I'm just going to look at the second phase and then I'll turn it back over to you and you can navigate the rest of the course the way you see fit. So again, in the spirit of taking the beach, now we've got capture the flag. So this is the end state. This is a bit of vision casting as well, but based on the analysis that we've done a lot of analysis together on this, Bruce and Michelle. This is kind of what we can expect once we are firing on all cylinders. We've listened to all of our customers, we've adapted, we've executed, we've done things right. The zoning and the size of the lot and the business model that we have in place, we call that capture the flag, because that's when victory comes for us in terms of fueling our dreams. This is what the operating income and the annual net operating income and the fair market value looks like for the village on those 6.5 acres based on $170,000 investment. But and I will add, there's additional investment that will and has been going into this as well. So in fairness, we're looking at about $1.6 million all in to get us to where this capture the flag state is.
And the question you got from Aaron, Woody, is how long will it take you to get to this stage where the project might be worth $4 or $5 million? How long does it take to capture the flag?
I think it'll be thrive in 25. So by 2025, we'd like to see it happen more quickly, but again, listening to our customers, reviewing everything, 12 to 18 months out to make sure that we're on track. We can accelerate that, and our plan is to go full force. But realistically, we want to make sure that we're not selling ourselves too short, and that we're making sure that we plan it properly. That's kind of what the timelines look like, and we've got people in our corner helping us get there quickly, so that could be reduced significantly, but we want to be realistic as well.
Right on. And what I'd like to show everybody, just before we turn to Jason and learn from Jason Park in a moment, what I'd like to show everybody is one of the first people to adapt or adopt this model back in, I think it was 2015. So a year after Blackstone started fooling around with this model. And I'll just show you very quickly where it all started, at least for me, where it all started. And you can see, oops, let me just get rid of this for a second, move a few things around here. You'll see here, this is a warehouse literally in the middle of nowhere. I think I have some pictures that'll show this. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. And it's probably 10 or 15 minutes drive time from, significant housing, a significant residential population. It's surrounded by farm fields. And this was about a 17 or 18,000 square foot substandard warehouse that was empty. It has over here on the right-hand side, you can see it. It has a coverall building. You can sort of see back here, there's a farmhouse, and then there's another small coverall building in behind. And I'll just show you a few more pictures. That's a close-up of the coverall building. That's a photograph very early on of the farmhouse. And so what my clients did, this was just talking about never taking no for an answer. Clients of mine offered $250,000 for a 2-acre site, industrial site with these existing buildings on it. The asking price was, I think, $990. So they offered $250,000 and it was refused. But it had been days on market over a year. And the reason for that, going back to the industrial building, is this industrial building only has, I think, 11-foot ceiling height. No major industrial company would ever want to, put their facility in here. They would just, Amazon needs 60 feet or 50 feet of ceiling height. Wayfair probably about the same. All these major industrial companies need at least 30 feet clear height, and they don't want any columns in it. It has to be column free. So this was a warehouse that had been empty for a long time. The company that was selling it wanted to get rid of it. They had no offers, over 400 days, I think, on the market. My clients bought it eventually for $270,000. So a little bit more than you paid, Michelle and Woody, but still a very, very good deal. But they bought it, to go to Dale's question, they bought it with a business model of mine, which I was talking to them about, which was dividing it up into small workshops. And here's some pictures I just took about a year later. They had small workshops in here for gigpreneurs, and this is before the pandemic. So this was the idea that people were having more and more side hustles was obviously going forward in a major way, even before the pandemic, and the pandemic accelerated it. There's probably 10 million new gigpreneurs out there today. I don't know, I just made that up, but there's probably many millions of them. And this is a small 400 square foot workshop. You can see it a little bit better here. And you notice how, Woody, it has a man door, a person door over here, and it has an overhead door. And you can see that we put in large corridors, overhead doors, so that we weren't chintzy with the corridors. So let me just tell you what happened. They bought it for about $270,000, and they invested about $450,000 in the upgrade of the building to create these workshops from as small as 400 square feet. I think the largest is about 5,000 square feet. The farmhouse we leased to an environmental company, and then the 2 coverall buildings to a couple of other industrial users. How long did that lease up take? It took 11 months, less than a year. It's full of these wonderful entrepreneurs. And the value of the property within 3 years, it might have been 3.5 years, Woody, but the value of the property went from what they bought it for to just under 3 million in about 3.5 years. So I think free in 25, or what was the 2025 slogan?
Thrive in 25.
Okay, I missed it by a whole bunch. The Thrive in 25 is a great target, and I think you'll be successful with it. And not just because Smith Falls is an economy, a local economy that is improving, but you know, you can draw from quite a region. People will, like some of the workshops that I own and rent. I have one guy, he couldn't find a workshop near where he lives, and he makes a trek to my facility, takes 55 minutes each way. So I wouldn't want to do that. I hope that most people that I rent to will be within 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And because Aaron is on the call with us, I wanted to emphasize to you, Aaron, that if you do something similar to this, and because you're in the tiny home business now, you manufacture them and sell them, that the model that I think is going to really just go crazy in the next 20, 25 years. I mean, my planning horizon isn't that long because I'm 71, but yours might be, and certainly Woody and Michelle's might be. The model that will change will be the live-work condition. That I can't tell you, about half of the people who come to me to rent a workshop want to rent a tiny house too. So we have 2 right now on site, and we'd like to have a bunch more to accommodate the live-work condition. And that's the future. All right, so Jason, are you there? All right, unmute yourself for a moment, please.
All right. Yeah. Hi, Bruce.
It's great
Hi,
to have
everybody.
you on the Buildup course, Jason. We're very, very fortunate to have you here. But before I turn to you, just officially, Matt, would you be, Woody, would you be comfortable putting your contact information in the chat box? And maybe,
Absolutely.
would you put in the URL for the website, the Village Workshops website as well? And did you mention, Woody, that you're calling your tenants? Maybe I mentioned that you're going to call them villagers, not tenants, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We're really going to build on the whole village theme.
Right. So which I love, by the way, that theming is very strong. So when you mention clients, I would like you to strike that out of your language and call them villagers. Just that's it. Just use your terminology and other people will adopt it. The other thing that I wanted to add to the model, which Aaron, you and Brad have got in spades, which I'm hoping that Woody and Michelle will do too, is to add a playland. By playland, I don't mean a kiddie playland. I mean something for all generations, where you can play horseshoes, have a barbecue, maybe play pickleball, you know, play badminton, beach volleyball. You ask, why the heck would you ever add that to an industrial complex like what Woody and Michelle are building, or what you, Aaron and Brad, might do one day in Rockland? And that's because we've talked about it on this course before, whether it's a multi-res building, it's a commercial setting, an industrial setting, tenants or villagers that play together, stay together. You know, people who work in industry, they work hard and they want to play as well. So that's enough of that. So the models, as you can see, the business models change, they adapt, they evolve. And who knows where it'll be in 2 years. I'm excited to learn. Thrive in 25, right, Woody?
You got it.
All right, so put your information in the chat box, and then we'll turn to Jason. We are incredibly fortunate to have the CEO, and I think maybe one of the founders of Rethink and Diversify. And Jason Park is here to talk to us for the next 30 minutes on what he is doing. One of the things that I really like about what Jason is doing is, and I'll just see if I can boot it up. Give me 1 second here, because I have a few notes, Jason. One of the things that Jason talks about all the time is that he does his, and he'll tell you himself, but Rethink and Diversify is on sort of 2 sides of the equation. Individuals can put money into the fund and hopefully do well. He believes in diversifying your portfolio. Now, as you know, speaking for myself, I teach and talk about owning a personal business for life and also owning some real estate. But the Rethink and Diversify idea is that it's more than just that, and that you need some financial assets too. So people can put money into these funds, hopefully do well and diversify. And we're going to hear more from Jason in a minute on that. The other thing that we've talked about is that if you're a real estate developer, one of the things that many real estate developers are doing today is they're either working with an existing fund or developing their own. Because financing in real estate has become exceedingly difficult. It's always been difficult. You know, if you're a tech startup, maybe you go to a venture capital firm and get some money, maybe. But if you're in real estate, you know, it's more difficult, it's more complex, and probably more expensive in some ways. So Jason, welcome. And I was hoping you could start us off by telling us a little bit more about Rethink and Diversify. You've been there for quite a few years now.
Yep, that's right, Bruce. Thank you. And you're right. I am the founder of Rethink and Diversify Securities. We go more commonly by R&D. You know, the story of R&D goes back to 2008, 2009, when I was just a young college grad from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So where I grew up is a very small town called Esterhazy, Saskatchewan, and we have potash mines, and we've got a lot of agriculture and a lot of farmers. So when I graduated, jobs were pretty scarce. You know, especially in my field, there were a lot of people a lot more qualified than I was applying for the same jobs. So I wasn't even getting PFO letters when I would send out a resume. But I walked into a Raymond James one day and got to know the branch manager there. And he offered me a position to start as an investment advisor there. So what I was seeing with my clients that I was initially starting with, being farmers and people working at a potash mine, was, you know, they had $1 million saved, they were ready to retire, and suddenly they've got $500,000 9 months later. And they're looking at their advisor and they're saying, what just happened here? I thought I had a diversified portfolio. And so it was a great time to enter that particular industry because people were looking for answers. And, you know, I thought to myself, this is great, but how am I going to protect my clients from ever having this happen again? Because these systemic shocks are happening more and more often.
Yeah.
There's less and less diversification when you go geographically from the United States, Canada, China. The flow of information is so fast, and we're such a global interconnected world that you can't diversify in that way anymore. So I was looking for a solution to this problem of, you know, when 2008 happens again, we don't know when it will. We just know that it will, and we know that it'll happen again and again and again. How can you properly protect your clients and yourself from these systemic shocks?
Jason, I'd like to add something to that, if I may. When I was on the NHL Board of Governors and participating with the National Hockey League, all members of the NHL are required, of the NHL family, are required to contribute to the NHL pension fund, including owners. And so I did. And that goes back to the early 90s and all the way through to the mid 2000s. Anyway, when I checked with my pension fund, the NHL pension fund, how they were doing, by that time it might have been 20 years on, I would have been better. This would have been just after 2012, I think. I would have been better to take the money that we invested in the fund and stuff it in my mattress, or just keep it in cash. It went down in 2008 to, I think, 2010, went down by 26%. So whatever gains we had before that were more than wiped out. And in fact, it was terrible. And then I also had a portfolio, it wasn't a huge portfolio, but it was low seven figures with the CIBC and with the private bank. And in the greatest stock market boom maybe ever, they had managed to turn my portfolio from whatever it was in the low seven figures. It had dropped an average of 2% a year. Now, let me ask somebody, who can I pick on? It doesn't really matter. Since I can see you, Dennis, I'll ask you, how long does it take to double your money at minus 2% a year?
Good question. You never double.
Well, the answer is, of course, never. They had managed to turn a portfolio, which wasn't huge, into something that lost money every year during the greatest stock market boom since the railroad stock market boom, I think, of the 19th century. So when Jason, you volunteered or were voluntold to come and join us at Buildup, can you tell me how then you mitigate these kind of black swan events?
Yeah, it truly is. When you go through the options, like I said, can you diversify geographically? Not really. Can you diversify between industries? Again, not really. And when these sell-offs happen, everything gets sold off. It goes from true valuation to more of sentiment type of trading, and so it's not always completely rational. So, I was in the industry for 4 years before, and I'd been investing myself since I was a teenager, and I never heard of the exempt market space until then. And I instantly gravitated toward it because I understood how this would fit in people's portfolios to actually properly diversify from those type of events. Because, if there's a global financial crisis in the United States, or a war breaks out in Russia or the Ukraine, that doesn't always, if it does, it takes a long time for it to impact the local grocery store or the local convenience store or the local the farmer. Farmland is an exempt market security. So there's a great example of an asset class that has zero correlation to the stock markets, to the bond markets, to basically any other asset class. It's sort of like the hidden gem of asset class investing. And because there's no volatility. Again, they're not making any more of it. People got to eat, and it just goes up and up and up in value. So that is, unless there's a third or a fourth way, I can't really think of another way to properly diversify. And a really good example is you look at the most brilliant minds in Canada for money management, and you're talking about the Canada Pension Plan, you're talking about OMERS, and they went from allocations of nearly 0%, call it 15 years ago, to CPP is almost 50% in private investments as of today. So
can you tell us,
massive shift.
Can you tell us, because I'm not really clear on it either, the difference between a private equity deal and a private debt deal?
Mm-hmm. So private equity is either you're investing in a mutual fund trust or a real estate trust or common shares of a business, and with that you participate in the equity upside. So it's riskier, but there's more upside for you. When you do the private debt deals, they're typically quite a bit less risky, but your return isn't going to be anywhere near. So you rank senior, you rank higher in position. In case of the business not working out, there's always some kind of security backstopping the debt, whether it's the physical asset or a portfolio that the owner has that he secures again. There's something securing the debt, and you'll typically have a 3-year or a 5-year, ranging anywhere from 8.5% to 10.5%. And that at the end of that, assuming everything works out, you'll get your coupon and you'll get your cash back. So yeah, it's the same as in the public world. It truly is exactly the same.
So one of the things that I think makes sense for a lot of these funds, and it's certainly something I've been coaching on for many, many years, is a combination. And I don't know if you do that at R&D, and it's a question I have for you, but for everybody else on the call, it's one of the things that some of the funds that I coach are doing. And in other words, they do private equity and private debt. So let's say you needed $3.5 million to do a project of some sort. Possibly the private equity firm would say, okay, I'll put $2 million of debt in place at 10% or whatever it is for 3 years or maybe 5 years, but the rest I'll invest in equity. And the reason that some funds do that, especially some private equity funds do that, is exactly what Jason said. You participate in the equity side. If you think about real estate, my daughter, one of my daughters bought a house for $345,000 5 years ago. It was appraised last year at $807,000. it's hard for a young woman with two little children and a husband to save $500,000 or $400,000 in 5 years. But real estate on the, has done well over the last number of years. Who knows if it'll continue, but we'll see. So Jason, would you, when in terms of how you place your funds, would you do a little bit of both?
Yeah, we see a little bit of both. And typically it's the fund itself that's structuring both of those raises. So they'll go and they'll structure an equity component, they'll go and they'll structure a private debt component, and they'll raise capital on both verticals. So that would be two separate offerings that we could take to our clients, and our clients could choose what risk threshold they prefer. For someone younger with a longer time horizon, more often they're picking the equity investment. For somebody older or more nearing retirement looking for income, they'll more typically choose the safer debt component. And yeah, we see a mixture of that all the time. That's on the real estate side. On something more like tech, we do see a lot of convertible debentures, or they're called safes. And basically a safe is, if you want to just make it simple, well, I'm oversimplifying, but it's a convertible debenture. And we do see quite a bit of that happening. So people can go and it's hard to determine the value initially. Like, should it be a $2 million valuation, $3 million? Well, how about we get some money into the business, we let it operate for a couple of years, and then after a couple of years, the investor can convert at their discretion at a discount to the market value, plus receive that interest rate along the way. So yeah, we see all kinds of that debt equity combination in our investments.
Yeah, and what Jason is talking about when he talks about a convertible note is it really, kind of straddles both the debt and equity side. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. Yeah.
So Jason, why Saskatoon? And by the way, I love Saskatchewan. I have done some keynote speaking out there, and I'll just tell you a quick story. When I was doing a keynote speech in Saskatoon, the hotel was, I don't know, maybe it's 3/4 of a mile from from where the speech was going to take place. And it was, it wasn't really cold by Saskatoon standards, but it was about -15. And it was a early morning speech. So I got up, I got a little exercise. I think I did a little yoga. And then I decided I'll walk to the convention center. And it was a beautiful day, a bit cold, but it was a nice day. And, when you're going to give a keynote, you want your brain to be full of oxygen. You want to have lots of energy. And so I'm walking, maybe it's a mile, but I think it was less. I couldn't walk 200 yards without somebody stopping and say, "Hey, would you like a lift?" No, I'm fine. They didn't know who I was. I was just a guy walking. And, I must have had 3 or 4 offers, So why are you in Saskatoon as opposed to the center of the universe, AKA Toronto?
Yeah, so I guess I have to confess, I am currently in North York on this call.
Uh-oh. I
So,
think I screwed up there.
I'm a prairie boy, but I never thought I'd be out here, but I live in Kingston and I have for the last 7 years.
Okay.
And I love it out here. Truly, it's such a scenic, beautiful place to live. But I formed the dealer in Saskatchewan because that was where I lived when I was forming it. So just how it works is it's a very, very regulated industry. There's a ton of red tape.
Yeah.
It took over a year just to gain our registration. So imagine not having a job for an entire year while you're trying to get a regulatory stamp so you can start operating your business. And then now you're approved to operate, but you have no dealing reps, you have no advisors. So now you got to go build out the advisor network and so on and so forth. So it was an extremely difficult road to getting to where we are. But Saskatchewan was just because that was home at the time, and that would be our principal regulator. So it just stays, your head office stays where you initially gain your registration. So now we're across all the major provinces, and I don't even live there anymore, but it's home and it always will be. Yeah.
So Sean Sweeney is on the call. Just wave hi, Sean. And at least he was there. Sean is there. He is. Wave hi, Sean. And Sean's on the call, and he is starting a new business called Score Academy. It's really an existing business, but he is expanding it, and maybe he's going to get some help from Aaron Markle and Brad Karchik. And the business is, teaching young people and some a little bit older how to be better tennis players, maybe better pickleball players. It's called Score Academy. So there's a real estate component and there's a business component. When you're looking at, private equity deals, can you tell us, with some real estate involved and some operating business, can you tell us what your criteria are to select, well, is this something that an exempt mark dealer might bring to its funding clients?
Well, there's a couple of routes. So we generally have to answer two questions positively. The first one is, would this be a reasonable investment for at least some of our clients? And so that's looking at our existing risk return universe that we have. So that one's usually yes, but not always, and it gets harder and harder to get approved as we add offerings. The second question that we have to answer positively is, does this investment have a reasonable chance of achieving its investment objectives and criteria? And for that, there's we have a due diligence checklist of 150 different items, document requisitions that we'll request. So typically what people do is they go and they set up a data room and they just dump everything in there. The financial modeling, the business plan, all of the shareholder agreements, all the underlying agreements, if it's a trust, all the trust documents. And we go through one at a time and we review everything and we make sure that the modeling checks out to the agreements. So as long as we can do that, that's part of the equation. Then the other part is looking at the management's track record and their team and just making an assessment on, can they go out and execute on what they're planning to do with their business. So as long as we can answer both of those positively, we can raise money for them. What we have seen happen is, unfortunately, there's a great business model. We go through all this work. There's a cost to do the due diligence. We charge issuers to go through it. And it's great, you're approved, and we don't raise a penny. And we hate it when that happens. So we try and not put somebody through the process if we think that there's at all a chance that would happen. But once you're through, you still need to build a relationship with the representatives to go client to client to raise capital for your project. So what's really useful is that if the person coming to raise the capital actually has a network of their own and they want to essentially use us to make sure that they aren't accidentally breaking a securities law while they raise capital for their business ventures, because we see that all the time where people are very well intentioned and but just don't know that there's real technicalities on who can and who can't invest in different investment products that are being, when you're raising capital from the public. So that's a service that we provide, and it's something that we've seen good success. And then typically when people come in, slowly but surely, they do build out that relationship, and then they do raise, 300,000, 2 million, 8 million, 10 million a year going forward with us. But it takes time. And so we really have to make sure that we prepare everybody who's coming in. We have seen it from time to time where someone comes in and they raise 8-10 million bucks right away. It has happened, but that's more of the exception. More of the rule is, about 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, then a couple million. So that offering needs to fit to be successful with those kind of numbers being raised out of the gate.
That's interesting. We also have Aaron Markle, who's co-hosting Buildup course on here. And Aaron has, I don't know, probably 20 different businesses, and he's very successful. But one of them, which I think, well, actually two of them, which I think will be worth $500 million each. I really mean that. And not just because Aaron's on the call with us, Jason. But one of them, which I mentioned earlier, is a small living company, which builds tiny houses. And the other is Small Living Village, which builds tiny house towns. And there's an incredible demand for, this is probably a worldwide movement, but certainly it's very, very strong in places like Colorado, California, I'm sure it's popular in Saskatchewan. It's certainly all of North America, and Mexico as well. So at what stage would a company be of interest to a market exempt dealer like R&D? What stage, is it a startup stage? Is it a little bit later? Is it a mezzanine stage? Where is it?
So we do have a couple of venture capital funds that are R&D's, they're internal funds, they're our proprietary funds. So we do a little bit of startup. So every year we have between, $500,000 and call it 4 or 5 million that we can put into startup or very, very early stage companies. And as long as they fit venture capital requirements, we can invest in those. More typically, the bread and butter, most of our capital raise, because we're raising about 100 million a year right now. It's on established sort of a business. So kind of past that initial startup stage and into more of like the money that's going to be used is going to be used to scale and grow from an already proven existing business model. So we do have a little bit of capital for that startup, a good startup stage, but most of our investments, and a lot of it's RRSP, TFSA dollars from our clients, is going towards more of the growth stage companies.
That makes a lot of sense. So Aaron, what that is it's the mezzanine stage. It's money used for scaling. And we've talked about that. And to get to that $500 million number, you're going to be at a position fairly soon where you're going to need that. A couple more questions. When I was raising money for the original deal to buy the Sens, Jason,
Yeah.
We paid $50 million US dollars for the expansion franchise, and the Sens, of course, today are for sale, and probably the sale price will be about $1 billion. So the numbers I'm about to talk about are now out of date. But when we were doing it, we worked with a dealer network based on CIBC Wood Gundy, still around today. So we worked with CIBC Wood Gundy, and we raised $18.5 million of straight equity to help us fund the original purchase of the hockey team. And then we raised some more money to build our building, the Canadian Tire Center. So the total capitalization between the team and the building was around $485 million. Today, a team will cost you $1 billion, possibly. And a new arena could be anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 billion. So the numbers are much bigger today, but this is the same principle. So I'll tell you, I'll share with everybody, CIBC Wood Gundy charged us an 8.5% success fee. So that worked out to about 1.5 or $1.6 million. So for everybody on the call, hiring somebody like CIBC Wood Gundy or R&D is not cheap. I mean, I'm not saying it's unduly expensive, but it was an 8.5% fee. So we paid between 1.5 and $1.6 million fee to CIBC Wood Gundy, and they helped us with $18.5 million. Is that the kind of fee range for R&D? Is it more? Is it less?
Yeah, that would be sort of right in line. So confidentially, we're part of one of the bids that are going in for this new owner. And very, very, very small allocation, but it'll probably be 10%.
Okay, so you have to remember raising money, whether it's debt or equity, and I think Jason said it very well, takes time, takes effort, takes money. And something else that Jason said, he's so polite, but I understood what he said, so I'm just going to underline it for everybody. Something else that he said, and I think I got it right, Jason. If I didn't, you'll obviously correct me. But something else that Jason said that I think is very important is that whether you're raising $300,000 or $400,000, that what or $10 million or $18.5 million or whatever the number might be, that what R&D does is it creates an envelope for you to work within. But I suspect from what you said, Jason, that a lot of the actual money that you're raising is actually funneled in by the people who are actually clients of yours. It's their network who are investing through this envelope that you create.
That's exactly correct. Yep.
I want to underline that again. You have to have a network. And I work with some developers who have, funds that are as in Canada, $750 million, a couple of funds in the United States that are in the many billions. The American economy is just vast. It is the largest economy on the planet and likely to stay that way for some time. I don't think China is going to become the largest economy, Jason. I think it will be the United States maintaining that for some time yet. So think about that, whether you're raising $300,000 or $10 or $12 million, whatever it might be, you better have a network. And again, the companies that I work with in the States who have raised much bigger numbers, it is mostly their contacts who like their industry, who like their business model, who are putting it in. And they either have their own fund that they set up, or they're working with somebody like Jason, who has already done all the homework. So that is the next question, Jason. If you were recommending to people who were at the $300,000 to say $10 million level, should they set up their own fund, or would they be better off working with an established fund or market exempt dealer like you?
Very good question. And I don't know if there's I have to kind of give a political answer here and say it depends. What I do know is that we do help structuring the funds. And when we do that, we typically see more success because we know what our retail clients want to invest in. So if you're planning, or if you're thinking that it might be time to take that step and to build a fund, it might be good to work with us we know a few different good legal services, a few different good auditors that we've been working with for years to kind of minimize your costs of getting that fund and those documents that you need to start raising your money from the exempt market space. So we do see more success when we help structure it than when someone goes out and just builds a fund on their own. But that being said, it always depends. So there is no straight answer I wish I could give, but
well, I think that was a good answer. If Jason was more salesy, he would have said, well, yeah, you should work with me, but he's Canadian. You're a Canadian, I suspect, as opposed to my American friends, have no trouble saying, yeah, call me now.
Yeah.
In terms of the people who are putting money in, I know I read from your website, it can be as low as $5,000 that people can put into private equity, correct?
Yeah.
Think about that. Sorry, Jason, I don't mean to cut you off, but I did. Think about that. So let's say, Aaron, you wanted to raise, I don't know, $2 million or $3 million, whatever it is, that yes, you want to do that. If you did it yourself, you would probably want $250,000 and you get 10 people to chip in. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Then you could just do a joint venture agreement and take it away from there. But if you wanted to open it up to more people, then working with somebody like Jason, who's already done the work, it will save you a year or two. That's why we went with CIBC Wood Gundy. I can tell you that of the $18.5 million that we raised, we could have raised much more because there was a lot of interest in the NHL and in the Senators when they were a new franchise. I suspect that probably 80%, if not more, of the people who invested were known to me personally. All right. And CIBC Gundy had some rich dudes in Toronto said, yeah, I'd like to be part of that. It wasn't Ryan Reynolds. I don't think he was born then. Anyway, all kidding aside, then what I'd like to hear from you, because we only got you for another minute or so, is what are your retail clients interested in today? They put $5,000, $50,000, $500,000 into one of your marketings. What is hot today? You mentioned, grocery. Is there interest in leisure businesses? Is there interested in stuff like Sean is doing or stuff like Aaron's doing? What is what's hot today? Because we know some things that are not hot. For example, if we came to you and said, we've got an office building in Manhattan, we'd like to sell you that's half empty, you would say no.
Probably would pass. Yeah. Most of what we do is real estate. So what Aaron's up to, that sounds very interesting. Sean, that sounds interesting as well. Matt, what you guys are doing, that's sort of our bread and butter. Most of what we raise money for is apartment buildings. It's just your plain vanilla multifamily. And there's usually some kind of a value add that the management team is doing. So, those are assets that typically do good in bad times and do good in good times. But most of what we raise money for is real estate backed, something tangible, something with a value add, and something interesting. So about $7 out of $10 is those, and then the other 3 out of 10 are tax advantaged or everything else. So.
Isn't that interesting, you guys? Be honest with you, I didn't really know the details until we had a chance to spend a half an hour with Jason. So, Jason, did you have a chance to listen to Woody's and Michelle's presentation, or at least part of it?
Yep. Yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting. And Woody, if you don't mind unmuting yourself for one more minute, something that I think Woody did allude to in his presentation is that he and Michelle would like to have a dozen of these, or maybe 30 of them across Canada and the States. If you think about it, if you could buy something for $170,000 and drive it up to a value of 4 or 5 million, if you had 30 of those, Woody, that might be a $150 million valuation.
Absolutely. Yep. That's the yellow brick road we're looking at.
So put Jason on your speed dial, please.
Absolutely.
So Jason, would you, just as I've kept you overtime now 1 minute, I apologize to everybody, but would you put your contact information in the chat box, if you don't mind, your name and cell number, if you're comfortable with that, and your email address, and people should copy it out of the chat box. Aaron, you're listening? Sean, Woody, Michael, everybody. So to me, what we've heard from Jason is really, really crucial to the Buildup course and to other people. We have about half the people who can join the course live, and then the other half have real jobs and they have to listen to the replay. But Jason, we will send a link. It goes on YouTube unlisted, so you will have the replay. If there's anything part of this that you want, you're obviously obviously able to use it in any way that you want. But on behalf of myself and the other Buildup students, the ones who are here live and the ones who will watch it, what a great presentation. I wish we'd had you for longer, and maybe my questions could have been better, but thank you.
Well, I appreciate it greatly, Bruce, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And I look forward to, I'm sure we're going to be talking more. And Woody, you get the one village up and operational. BDC will help you with that because you're at that startup stage, and they'll certainly help you, in my opinion. But when you're ready to expand, this is the man we talk to. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you so much for coming today. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.